Silver and copper, the physical assets, not the traded assets, the digital traded assets that are traded in New York and London, is disappearing, and we can see people stepping into these markets. And that I think that this has led directly to the Bank of America was saying that we may see $300 silver later this year. It's very difficult to understand this push by the Trump administration in terms of insisting that disrupt his own country and disrupt the world economy. The movement of fertilizer, the movement of energy, the creation of oils, the production of metals, and to bring all this stuff to a standstill or to a destabilized, potentially collapsing position in order to stop Iran from having what he says is a nuclear weapon, which we've been told they've been 6 months away from creating for 30 years now. The whole thing doesn't make sense, and it's certainly not going to make America great again. It's not going to make. It's going to bring down the industrialized world in which we live, and it's going to bring disruptions, especially to food and transportation, which is going to cause body stacking. This is not okay, and it's time to bring this war to an end. But I would say that Trump is owned, and he's doing this, it appears, for Israeli interests and not for American interests, and that's of great concern.
Guys, welcome back. Thanks so much for being here. That was one of the best precious metals analysts in the business, my friend David Jensen, and he's no shrinking violet. He knows what's up. We're in a lot of trouble, friends, and the AI data centers are the very tip of the iceberg, but they require mountains and mountains of physical silver. And with silver at $85 today, where's it going in the future, while we all worry about where our freedoms are going as well? Thanks so much for being here. We go deep and we go hard in the paint, and I'm glad you're here. Before we start, just a quick word. This episode is brought to you in part by Native Path Antarctic Krill Oil, omega-3s, plus astaxanthin for heart, joints, and memory. If you're taking fish oil for heart, joint, and memory support, here's something you need to know. Research shows fish oil is 50% less absorbable than krill oil because fish oil's omega-3s are in triglyceride form, where krill oils are in phospholipid form, which is the same format your cell walls are made of. That means krill oil gets into cells immediately. In head-to-head studies, krill oil outperformed fish oil at improving cholesterol, reducing inflammation, and easing joint pain, often at lower doses. Native Path Antarctic Krill Oil is sourced from pristine Antarctic waters, contains the powerful antioxidant astaxanthin, and comes in a tiny soft gel. No fishy bumps. For my special bundle offer plus free shipping, head to getkrill.com/SGT. That's getkrill.com/SGT. You can try it risk-free with a 365-day money-back guarantee. The link is below. Guys, welcome back. Thank you so much for being here. What you're looking at on my screen is SD Bullion, the silver price down today about 3% to 85 and change. And we're going to break down what's really going on in the precious metals markets today. And we're going to start with talk about the data centers and what's going on there with my friend David Jensen. Here's his Substack. You can always get the very latest at jensendavid.substack.com. Today we'll talk about copper and silver specifically, but we will start with the data center abomination. David Jensen, are you there? Welcome back.
I am. Thank you, Sean. Great to be back with you again.
How have you been, brother? I would just like to say that I envy the fact that you are safe and sound in the wilderness in the great north, British Columbia, while I'm stuck in suburbia. And you know who I think's got it right? Jeff Berwick down there in Mexico. He's built a huge ranch that multiple families could live on with solar, water, self-sustaining. He's been ahead of the curve, David, because I think what's coming is pretty awful, frankly. And I wanted to start with the data center conversation.
Okay.
Cisco surges most since .com bubble on raised outlook and AI-focused job cuts. Guys, let that sink in as they talk about the build-out of these data centers. Let me just go back to that article. And David, just give me your first blush response to that article. It seems to me Wall Street and the beast system is celebrating the cannibalization of America, American jobs, and America's freedom, and it's blowing a much larger bubble in the Nasdaq than I think anybody expected. Your thoughts on this article and data centers in general, or maybe the Nasdaq bubble, or is it not a bubble?
Well, I mean, when you're looking at if you stand back and look at the money stock, the money that's in the system, and M2 is a measure of how much it's really currency, not money, because it's fiat currency, but it's been increasing at over 5% per year for a protracted period. And so what you would expect is a misallocation of capital, and you would expect speculative activity along with increasing real goods prices. And I think we're seeing all of that. So, yeah, so I mean, the idea that we're going to build 3,500 of these data centers, you've got to ask yourself, what exactly is all this compute power necessary for? And I don't think I don't think it heralds a great new time for citizens of our countries at all, because of the misuse of the computing power and the monitoring citizens using the power for digital currency and digital IDs, et cetera, on the Chinese total citizen control model. So I don't think that the news is great, but I think they've run into a bit of a problem here, is that I don't see that they're going to be able to get the metals that they need to build these centers. And so that's an entirely different issue, as well as the energy to run them, right? Like, where is this energy going to come from? We certainly don't have the grid capacity right now. And overall, it's there's a lot of liquidity, a lot of speculative activity happening, and this Brave New World stuff, I just don't think is founded in reality in terms of what we're actually dealing with.
I got to tell you, I have contempt now for Trump and his administration. I know he's betrayed his base many times over. He's actively trying to unseat Thomas Massie in Kentucky. And I'll play a clip here in just a minute that vets that out a bit further with the Trump sons profiting from their drone companies. What people are looking at on my screen is America's brave new future that Wall Street and the Nasdaq companies are celebrating as they go skyward, based on this brave new future of Israeli surveillance data centers. That's what they are, in my opinion. These aren't just AI data centers. And let's vet that out a bit further with this clip from Greg Reese.
The AI data centers in America have already become hugely unpopular. The noise pollution from their cooling systems reach up to 100 decibels and run nonstop. They are drawing down aquifers in areas that are already in short supply, turning the water brown and tainting it with a disinfectant smell. And there is no benefit to the local community. A U.S. Chamber of Commerce report found that each data center provides about 157 jobs. Because of all this, developers have been using non-disclosure agreements with local officials, and projects are announced only weeks before voting for approval. There are now nearly 200 active opposition groups across the United States, and it's growing fast. The official story is that the U.S. needs to stay competitive to beat China in an artificial intelligence arms race. But that story does not add up. The United States has already built over 4,000 data centers. China ranks at number 4 with 368.
Let me pause it there. So maybe we're not in a bubble technically, because the hundreds of billions of dollars that are coming to build these data centers and enslave humanity, or at least enslave Americans, David, is real money that will be spent to build a real beast system. Therefore, the stocks are responding because the money is pouring directly into that direction. Meanwhile, Lake Mead is almost to Deadpool status. The Colorado River is almost no longer flowing. And did you know, David, that the Hoover Dam is now unoperational? They stopped operations at the Hoover Dam about a month ago.
Hoover Dam is now the deadliest water failure in recorded history of the American continent. Hoover Dam has gone dark for the first time in 90 years. Lake Mead has dropped to 953 feet, 3 feet above the elevation where the turbines physically die. Las Vegas has banned outdoor irrigation and drained the fountains on the Strip. Arizona has cut farm water allocations to 9% of normal. 40 million Americans across 7 states get their drinking water from one river, and that river is barely there. The Bureau of Reclamation used a word in writing that no federal agency uses without lawyers in the room: Deadpool. But here is the detail that tells the real story. The water managers who pulled the kill switch on Hoover Dam on April 9th did not call it an emergency. They called it a foundational system failure. The bathtub ring on Lake Mead is now visible from satellites, 10 stories of missing water carved into the canyon walls. And the snow on the Rockies that is supposed to refill it this spring never arrived. The mountains are bare. The turbines are silent. And the people in charge of the largest water delivery system in the continent are admitting on the record that the climate the system was built for no longer exists.
So we're in a lot of trouble here, and all we hear from Wall Street and the mainstream media is data centers are great. Get used to it, folks. They may have to steal your land. They may have to pollute and steal your water, but get used to it. And here's Tucker Carlson commenting on Larry Fink's biggest concern regarding the AI data centers. Have you heard this clip, David?
I haven't.
Listen to this.
But consider the concern. So if you're rolling out what they're telling you, and clearly they believe, is the single greatest technological change in the history of human life on this planet, it's the biggest thing that's ever happened, ever, then you think one of your main concerns would be, well, does this change the relationship of the powerless to the powerful, relationship of the citizen to the state, for example? One of your concerns would be, how do we do this and bring about the prosperity that it promises without totally eliminating human rights, making people slaves? Because we're against slavery, right? Aren't we against slavery? We were. How do we do that? But that doesn't seem to be Larry Fink's main concern. His main concern is, how do we protect our investment, this infrastructure, these buildings, these data centers? Someone could drone them. Someone could drone them. Now who? Foreign actors? Hezbollah? Hamas? No, just people. Larry Fink is concerned that ordinary American citizens, as he just said, will use $3,000 drones to destroy these billion-dollar investments. Why would he be worried about that?
Okay, why am I playing that clip? I'm playing that clip because Sebastian Gorka, who is now in the Trump administration, just labeled Nick Fuentes and Tucker Carlson as potential domestic terrorists. So this is our brave new world, folks. And meanwhile, oil price could go exponential, this according to JP Morgan. Meanwhile, we've got food shortages incoming. Fertilizer shortages are already here. We're in a lot of trouble, David, and I guess that brings us to silver. You can't build these data centers without silver, and the reason I own silver is not because of these stupid data centers. I own silver because it's real money. We're $39 trillion in debt. Meanwhile, we're celebrating AI data centers and a surveillance system that is going to rival, if not outpace, China's track and trace system. I feel like that's exactly the track we're on, and I'll show you something else in just 1 second. The Trump sons are profiting handsomely from it. What's your vantage point on all of this, sitting up there in British Columbia?
Well, we have a very distinct issue with the disruption of the oil flows out of the Persian Gulf. So there's a missing between 11 and 13 million barrels a day that's not flowing into the world market. Now, there is some demand destruction out there in terms of reduction of consumption, and there is a reduction in imports by China, which is a bit of a mystery, which has mitigated some of the price move and some of the impact of the reduced crude oil. But there's a couple of elements about the Persian Gulf which speak to great disruption in the world economy and in the metals markets. And I'd like to say the first is the disruption of sulfuric acid and sulfur out of the Persian Gulf. About 40% of the world's sulfur and about 20% of now that goes into producing sulfuric acid as well in other places, but they need that sulfur feedstock. And then there's also a just export of sulfuric acid itself out of the Gulf is about 20% of the world's supply. Now, this disruption it leads to a consequential reduction in the production of copper because the sulfuric acid is essential for a recovery of about 25% of the world's copper production. So and the other thing is that China, Japan, and Russia have all stopped export of sulfuric acid here in the last few months. So what we're going to see now is a disruption of copper production, and the thing that comes along with that is that silver is produced as a byproduct from copper mines. It's about 20%, 25% of the world's silver comes from, or 26% of the world's silver comes as a byproduct from these copper mines. So we're going to see a disruption of the supply of physical silver and physical copper from these mines into the global market. And as everybody knows, that these markets are quite tight right now, and they're projecting an accelerated demand as they continue this build out of data centers. And this disappearance of this supply from the market. Oh, by the way, it's not just copper mines, but the lead zinc mines that produce silver as well. They account for another 33% of annual silver supply. They also use sulfuric acid as a lesser reagent. So we've got the problem here of about 60% of the world's silver supply is going to be disrupted this year if this continues, and it looks like that is the intent. So silver and copper, the physical assets, not the traded assets, the digital traded assets that are traded in New York and London, is disappearing, and we can see people stepping into these markets. And, that I think that this has led directly to, the Bank of America was saying that we may see $300 silver later this year. And I would say that if this continues and the physical flow is disrupted into these trading centers, which are reliant on adequate physical metal being available, that or that few are demanding the delivery from these trading centers, that we could see a new price level and a disruption of the build out of these data centers.
Back to data centers. I want to play this clip just so people understand how insidious this is. And I'm glad there's an opposition to them building around the country, because people realize that they're being sold out and their jobs are being replaced by AI. So who could possibly root for these data centers? Who could possibly want these data centers other than the controllers of the world, right? The people that profit from them, the people invested in them. Because here's one thing we should all realize, David, none of this could be happening, the food shortages, okay, the shutdown of the Strait of Hormuz and the energy crisis, none of this could be hitting our shores as quickly as it is were it not for globalization. They have systemic control. The Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the controllers of this world, they have systemic control. If they did not have systemic control, the control that they built over decades, I would say maybe generations, none of this could happen. Look at the Amish. They're self-sufficient, but the rest of us are really going to suffer. And I think a lot of people are going to die when the energy prices get so high that people can't afford to heat their homes, especially in the winter. Listen to this.
And we've been fighting it tooth and nail for a year.
This is huge.
It's huge.
So I went out to meet Ron Morgan. He lives right next to a planned AI data center in Bessemer, Alabama. It's a suburb of Birmingham.
There's no way in the world that they're going to find a flat spot out there to build one building, let alone 18.
He said this land that you see, a lot of it's going to have to be destroyed.
Every bit of it. All the trees will be gone. The rocks will be gone.
And for those that care about nature, this is the true cost of an AI data center.
They're going to have to flatten. They keep saying 100 acres. Wrong. You've got 18 buildings that total 103 acres. You've got 2 substations that are as big as 2 of these buildings. You've got generator pads. You've got fuel storage facilities, roads, and parking lots. So you're looking at probably 200 to 300 acres that they're going to have to destroy. We've got a lawsuit pending against it for an arbitrary and capricious zoning ordinance change. They've got deep pockets. I mean, they can buy off any official in the state. I mean, there's no there's no moratorium on graft and corruption in the state of Alabama. This is the new gold rush. Everybody wants a piece of a data center because it's millions of dollars in tax revenue and millions of dollars into the pocket of the guy who owns the data center. But it doesn't help anybody.
It doesn't help anybody. So that brings me back to, I think, the elephant in the room that should be at the top of our discussion, every discussion everybody has from now on when you go out with friends for dinner. What are these AI data centers really for, David? Because we've survived pretty well without them for generations, but suddenly we need 5,000 AI data centers?
Yeah.
For what? They must be for surveillance, right?
Well, it's for the brave new digitized world. I mean, Larry Fink is talking about tokenizing all of the assets in the world, right? Putting them onto a digital spreadsheet, a distributed ledger, and controlling them through a completely digital system. So we can see this digital world or a digital farm that is being constructed for humanity to live on, based on digital ID and digital currency and social credit scoring, et cetera, et cetera. And but again, this plan is running head on into this global shortage of copper and silver, number one. And number two, the second problem that we have here from the Persian Gulf is the stoppage of the flow of what are called base oils. And the U.S. produces a lot of crude, but it produces 60% of the base oil that it needs. And the base oils are used in all lubricants and oils. So hydraulic oils, different greases and lubricants, motor oils. We just heard here a couple of days ago that Costco,
that's right.
Costco and Walmart have both been told that they can't get any more motor oil from Shell and from Chevron. And so they've lost supply of, we're going to see now in the next couple of weeks, motor oil shortages across the U.S. You would expect this to show up from Costco or Walmart first because they carry the least amount of inventory, right? They're a just-in-time supplier. So as the producers start to run out of motor oil from the loss of the base oil supply from Persian Gulf, it would hit these very low inventory distributors first, and here it comes. So there's a whole series of disruptions that are coming, and it's not going to be this smooth path to nirvana that's coming. The winter wheat yield this year is down 25%. Fertilizers from the Gulf, which is 40% of global fertilizer supply, has been cut off in terms of the nitrogen-based fertilizers, and now the sulfuric acid supply for the mines to produce copper and silver has been cut off. So all of these things are coming together, Sean, and it is very, very difficult to predict what the future is. It is not going to be a smooth transitional curve.
No, we're headed into a dystopic future, the likes of which I don't think any of us could have imagined just 5 years ago. And it's happening at lightning speed. And I want to get to the Trump family corruption in just 1 second. But I noted that same thing you just mentioned. I think it was Shell and Mobil have notified Costco. You say Walmart too. I didn't know that. Pretty soon there will be no motor oil on the shelves. Guess what I did yesterday with my son? He and I went to Walmart to buy a bunch of motor oil just to have it. And I know that is probably the lamest prepping you guys have ever heard of, because there's water and food should come first. But the shelves at Walmart were still full of motor oil. There's no run on motor oil yet, folks. But when I heard that, I thought, my God, they are going to bring us to our knees. I mean, well, just look at the cost of diesel right now. Mm-hmm. These truck drivers can barely afford to fill their trucks. We're in a lot of trouble, David. And I'm going to keep saying that. We are in a lot. Maybe that's the title of this show. We are in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, well, it's not just the oil supply to the consumers, to the retail buyers, but also to the industrial trucking companies that absolutely require the oil to continue the movement of these of the rigs that keep our society going. The economy and in general, the food supply system run on diesel, and to allow the trucks to move, and the trucks require motor oil in order to continue to move and distribute the goods that we all need to continue on a daily basis. So this is coming in the next few weeks here, Sean. I mean, it's not coming in 6 months. When you hear about Costco and Walmart being refused delivery of motor oil, then this stuff is going to show up in many places, and then the next thing you're going to hear is a run on motor oil like it was on toilet paper, during the C-19 scare. So so the curve, as I say, the curve to a future world is being disrupted with a lack of supply of real goods. And this is heading it's very difficult to understand this push by the Trump administration in terms of insisting that disrupt his own country and disrupt the world economy. The movement of fertilizer, the movement of energy, the creation of oils, the production of metals, and to bring all this stuff to a standstill or to a destabilized, potentially collapsing position in order to stop Iran from having what he says is a nuclear weapon, which we've been told they've been 6 months away from creating for 30 years now. The whole thing doesn't make sense, and it's certainly not going to make America great again. It's not going to make, it's going to bring down the industrialized world in which we live, and it's going to bring disruptions, especially to food and transportation, which is going to cause body stacking. This is not okay, and it's time to bring this war to an end. But I would say that Trump is owned, and he's doing this, it appears, for Israeli interests and not for American interests, and that's of great concern.
Yeah, God bless you for saying it. That's the real elephant in the room. And for these mega trust the plan folks and the Q trust the plan folks, let me just tell you this. Trusting the plan is going to get us surveillance data centers in our towns and killer drones up our asses because their plan is obvious. We're all Gazans now. And Sebastian Gorka is openly stating it. Tucker Carlson, a domestic terrorist for daring to oppose this incredibly horrific, malevolent plan. Here's Max Blumenthal dropping a bombshell about the Trump family corruption.
After this very strange incident at the White House press correspondents dinner where there was a shooter who shot no one and didn't even get shot, they said they need anti-drone technology. They need to establish a security base under the ballroom. It needs to be built. And where's all the money going to go to? It's all going to go to contractors that have been paying Donald Trump. So more corruption, just like the corruption that has granted Pentagon contracts for 2 separate drone companies that are now owned by Donald Trump's sons, one of which is actually an Israeli company that's producing technology for the Iran war. So we're talking about corruption that makes Hunter Biden look like Ralph Nader. It's corruption that makes Hunter Biden's art look like a Girl Scout baked cookie sale. It's the most corrupt administration we've ever seen.
The most corrupt administration we've ever seen. But many of you are told to trust the plan. Many of you are told if you oppose this, you're a panicon. You're panicking. You're a panicked conservative. I got to tell you, I think we've been sold out, David. I think the Trump administration has sold America out. And if this plan is allowed to continue at its current pace, well, Catherine Austin Fitts got it right. Americans won't hit the red button if it means their 401k and IRAs plummet. They won't hit the red button. So in this case, as long as their 401ks and IRAs are going up because of the data centers and the investment in our own enslavement, people will not opt out. People will comply. People won't hit the red button. Catherine Austin Fitts got it right. People won't hit the red button as long as they feel like they're getting richer.
Well, they say people won't until they can't feed their kids. And I would say that given the very visible disruption in transportation and food supply that's coming as a consequence of this elective war, that they're going to start hitting the red button. And so, there's the old, ordo ab chaos, from chaos order.
Yeah.
And, that could be part of this new restructuring. But to give you an idea of the scale of these data centers, there's just been a data center approved for Utah, which is 60 square miles.
Yep.
So you're talking about like a 7.5 by 7.5 mile data center. And again, where are you going to get the copper and the silver and all the rare earths and metals from to create these data centers when oil has been chopped off? I mean, the best laid plans of mice and men is about to be laid out in front of us here again. Like that, you have a plan, and then it gets greatly disrupted because there's so many different elements that come into it when you try to implement these disruptive restructurings.
Sorry for the quick break. By the time the news tells you to buy gold, it's too late. You're waiting. I get it. Everybody's waiting. Waiting to see if the ceasefire holds, waiting to see if the Strait of Hormuz reopens, waiting to see what happens next. But gold isn't waiting for you. It moves on fear, on instability, on debt, on the unknown, and it moves faster than you can react. So while you're waiting for certainty, the rest of the world is planning for what comes next. You can wait, or you can prepare. You can't do both. Remember, the best time to put on a seatbelt is before the accident, not after. Reach out to Noble Gold Investments. They help Americans protect their savings with physical gold and physical silver shipped to your door or held in a tax-advantaged IRA. No taxes and no penalties on rolling over a 401k or existing IRA. Visit noblegoldinvestments.com for your free investor kit right now. 5 minutes today could protect decades of savings. Choose noblegoldinvestments.com. Don't be the one still waiting. The link is below.
You have a plan, and then it gets greatly disrupted because there's so many different elements that come into it when you try to implement these disruptive restructurings.
Meanwhile, the Hoover Dam is not operational, folks. Meanwhile, the Hoover Dam is no longer operational. The Colorado River is nearly a dead pool, meaning it's no longer flowing. I just never thought we'd get here as quickly as we're getting here, and it's all by design. So let's move on. We'll talk about silver specifically. UBS has now lowered its silver projection for the year 2026 to like $85 an ounce. We'll play a clip about that in just 1 second, but I want to talk about the new Fed chair, Kevin Warsh. His hands appear to be tied. Are interest rates going up? Because I don't think he can lower interest rates in a very inflationary environment, David.
Yeah, no, the bond market sets interest rates, and right now the 30-year U.S. Treasury has gone over 5%. They're issuing for the first time in decades 30-year debt at 5%, and the Japanese yield on their 30 years at 4%. And that was near zero a couple of years ago. So the currency printers and the generators of the price inflation in our economy are being met with the reality of these inflationary speculative bubbles that they create. In the end, lead to so much misallocation of resources that and a greater and a greater dependency on more and more currency creation that the whole thing comes to a sudden stop. And no matter what Warsh is projected to be or says, he's going to be met by this reality, and we can see it. Anybody looking at Treasury rates, for the UK gilts, the US treasuries, and the Japanese government bonds, like the interest rates are soaring in all of these things. And the bubble stock market is about to be handcuffed by these rising interest rates.
One more clip regarding AI data centers, because I want everybody to realize, even if you profit from going long these companies and you enrich yourself with your 401k, your IRA, your cash money in your trading account, whatever, just want you to know you're financing our own enslavement, folks. And here's Tucker Carlson taking Shark Tank's Kevin O'Leary to task for who will ultimately pay. Who is ultimately paying for these data centers, folks?
To stop advancement of technology with the uncertainty it brings has always been a dilemma in capitalism and in America. And it's a fair comment
But how is this capitalism? If taxpayers are paying for some of it, how is that capitalism? That seems...
Oh, I think that's no different than building an apartment building downtown in Austin. You can get incentives for that too, and that's just part of how it works. You can debate
how is
that.
How is that capitalism? How is that free market? If politicians are handing you other people's money to do it, how is that capitalism?
Well, capitalism is built into the Constitution, which I think was genius, because it couldn't have even thought that far ahead, was the idea of competition between states. Why is there an exodus out of New York City to Miami, where I live? Why are people leaving New Jersey and Massachusetts and moving into my building? Nobody in my building is from Florida. They're all from other states.
I understand.
And all of these people moving, why? Because they're reaching retirement age, and the environment in these other states is not conducive to their lifestyle when they're being taxed.
But I think you're making my point for me. You just listed states that use a higher percentage of taxpayer dollars for private industry, and people are leaving those states, Illinois.
I'm not sure if that's the best clip, but I wanted to play it because ultimately these AI data centers will be paid for by the people whose land is being stolen. And case in point, the data center that David just mentioned in Utah, some 60 square miles, I believe. Is that right, David? Was it 60 square miles?
Yeah.
That is in part one of the investors in that data center in Utah that 3 commissioners approved despite a gymnasium filled with citizens opposing it. One of the investors in that data center, in part, is Kevin O'Leary. So I just want people to know they are paying for their own enslavement. All right, back to silver. Here's Vince Lancy talking about that new UBS report, and I just want your opinion on this because I guess UBS is making the case that this spike in the silver price will be short-lived because as soon as Z and Trump, who are meeting today, by the way, and I guess that's going swimmingly well, as soon as those guys cozy up, I guess China is just going to open their doors and let us have some of their silver. Listen to this, and I want your opinion on it.
And reading in between the lines of the UBS report and thinking that maybe they just don't want it to be that bad, I say to myself, isn't this what we said about London, about the LBMA? That, there's plenty of silver, they just have to get it. Well, yeah, there's plenty of silver. COMEX just has to get it. So these things seem to be constantly marketed to us as transitory, short-term problems or a policy confusion and not structural, but they end up manifesting in much higher prices. So if we were to go above 95, if we were to approach 95, let's put it that way. If we were to approach 95, that would probably be as a result of some geopolitical mishap with tariffs or Section 301. People want to look up the expression Section 301 trade review. That's the fundamental aspect of what's driving the market right now. And you'll find out that if we break off our trading relationship with China even more, then you'll find out that all the silver that we have that's theirs, we can't have it anymore. And so that'll deplete our supply even more. Anyway, so that's it. That's so the first question, the answer to the first question is you want to put a thumbtack or you want to put a pin in your calendar for the 15th, because that's when Xi and Trump are done. And when Xi and Trump are done, that could be a big signpost for this to clear up.
Okay. I personally disagree with what he's saying. And when people say, oh, there's plenty of silver out there, the COMEX just needs to find it, that reminds me of the things that CPM Group's Jeff Christian says constantly. And the Silver Institute, by the way. So what are your thoughts on what he just said? May 15th, as you and I are having this conversation, David, is tomorrow. Do things just clear up and suddenly there's going to be plenty of silver because of a handshake deal between the corrupt Trump and Z?
I don't know where that comes from. We can see, like today, the difference in price between New York and Shanghai is $11 an ounce. So there's a shortage of silver. This is telling us that there's a shortage of silver in China in terms of what is available to market. It only costs $2 an ounce to move silver from London and New York to Shanghai. So with that $11 spread, there's an instant $9 to be made by shipping Western silver into China, number one. Number two is that we're about to see if this conflict continues, and even for some period after if it's magically stopped, you're not going to see the return of flows of this sulfuric acid again immediately to the market. And we're still going to have disruptions of these production facilities, these mines from copper and the polymetallic mines in terms of the production of silver and availability to market from that source. So I just don't see how things, how an agreement between Trump and Xi is going to drastically change the silver outlook. And another point, Sean, is that UBS in January of this year projected the deficit, the silver deficit of silver available to market at 300 million ounces this year. And that was before disruption of the mining operations. Obviously January was before the start of the war on Iran. So I just don't understand where the silver is going to appear and impact a market which is heading for intensified deficit in terms of the production and availability of this material to the market. Both copper and silver, I think, are going to be in distress because of the shortage being accelerated by this war on Iran.
Before I play this clip from Alistair McLeod, which is more in line with my view on silver, let me put on my tinfoil hat just for a second and want your thoughts on this. From a conspiracy theorist's viewpoint, if we believe that the power brokers that control the world own all the chess pieces on the game of Risk, remember that board game Risk? If they own China, they own the United States, they own all the players, maybe they even own Iran, essentially, control Iran. Maybe they don't, but let's just conspiracy theorist this one. What if China is willing to reopen the door and send silver to the United States to help build out these data centers because enslaving humanity is the goal? Is that essentially something that could be in the cards? Because, one thing we're not being told about these data centers is the mountains of silver it would take to build them out. These server farms don't run without silver, period, full stop. So I guess the conspiracy theorist in me that worries about this stuff might worry that China is fully on board with giving Trump all the silver he needs to build out the AI surveillance track and trace systems, these data centers. What do you think of that idea?
No idea. It's, all I can see is the data that we have, the price structures that we have, and the deficits that have been building year after year. I think we're in the 7th year now when you include ETF demand in terms of a deficit of supply. So does China have these billions of ounces of silver that they're going to suddenly make available to market? Well, maybe, I don't know. But I don't understand where this is coming from, that China is all of a sudden ready to give up its assets into the global market. And certainly the pricing differential between China and the Western markets running at $11 an ounce is not telling us that there are great amounts of silver. There may be hidden government stockpiles we don't know about, but I just don't know where this concept that they're about to release silver into the market comes from.
Yeah.
Have Chinese sources said this? I just don't know where the concept comes from.
No, and I'm just spitballing based on, essentially what Vince Lancy just said. He believes this whole thing could come to a quick end and silver, I guess, could go down in price again because of this relationship between Xi and Trump. And so I'm just spitballing here because, I tend to be more with you. And my hope is, I think the hope for humanity, it's crazy that I would even say that in regards to China, but the hope for humanity would be that China is playing the rope-a-dope with the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and will betray them and not play ball. And, Sun Tzu's Art of War. You want to talk about the long game, look at the history of China versus our short history as a nation state. Here's Alistair McLeod on the fact that there really is not enough silver.
There's not enough silver in London. There's not enough on COMEX and probably not enough in Shanghai either. This is not a speculative mania. As you can see from the chart of the price and open interest has been declining to very low levels as the price rises. Now, this doesn't normally happen. Normally, when the price rises, more people get on board and they buy it as the price rises. No, this is a squeeze on paper contracts which simply cannot be delivered in the physical silver being demanded. And we look at the second chart, it confirms the managed money category, which is mainly hedge funds, it's almost entirely hedge funds, have the lowest long exposure for the last 20 years. This is really remarkable. And it puts the lie to people who think that this is an investment and all the investors are on board and they bought it and it's time that it's going to be shaken out. No, this is very different. This is a squeeze on the system.
What do you make of that, David?
I agree with him. There's a shortage of this metal, which has been building over decades. And the Chinese silver cavalry idea is, I don't know where that comes from. So I have not heard of this before, that China is about to release gobs of silver into the market because they want to help data centers. I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
show me some data.
No, and to be clear, that's just me spitballing because today, evidently, the meeting between Xi and Trump is going wonderfully well, and silver's down 3%. So I'm just spitballing here. And I mean, the main thing we should be talking about, though, is the non-compliance with the data centers. People need to get involved on a community level. They need to be going to every single meeting regarding these beastly data centers, because I think this is the build out of the beast system. I mean, if we're to think about biblical prophecy, the beast system would be exactly what we see, a track and trace system that will monitor everything every human being, or at least every American, does in real time, every transaction you make, every purchase you make. And if you don't play ball, I guess, take the chip, take the mark of the beast, whatever, you'll be shut out of that system. I personally think that's what's coming into fruition. And and I hope I'm wrong. But these data centers make no sense to anybody, David.
Yeah, it's interesting that the solution to these digital control systems again circles back to silver and the use of silver as private money. And we've seen now, since the Fed was really the last of the currency printer central banks to be created in 1913, just the terrible loss of buying power. In reality, 99% of the buying power of the U.S. dollar has been lost since the creation of the currency printing central planning agency there, the Federal Reserve, in 1913. And individuals, I think, are starting to wake up in a way that they hadn't anticipated. And I think that the Freedom Convoy, the trucking convoy that went across Canada, I think occurred in a way that the central planners hadn't anticipated either, in terms of a statement of people putting their foot down and saying, we disagree with this scare, this fright which is being created, and the imposition of squeezing people in terms of forcing them to coercing them to take shots for a bug, with experimental shots that aren't fully tested for a bug that has an infection fatality rate for people under 60, which was the flu or less. And nobody under 20 died of COVID who didn't have serious pre-existing health conditions, and yet they want to give the shots to 3 and 6 year old infants. So the entirety of this imposition of this digital control grid can be pushed back against by use of private money and the departure from this corrupted and highly ineffective and extremely poorly managed government currency systems. Whether you're dealing with bills in your wallet or digital IDs from the government, it doesn't work. We know central planning, the steps taken by these individuals is either negative in terms of the consequences on citizens intentionally, or it's just the fact that a lot of them of the central planning choices that are made by flunkies, and they can't emulate the power of a market economy to effectively allocate resources.
As we wrap up the conversation, let's just dissect this image that we've all been looking at on my screen? Because it's just occurred to me that I'm saying this wrong. I keep saying that these AI data centers make no sense. That's not correct. They make perfect sense if a dystopic AI-driven reality is what's coming for we the people. If we are to live under the thumb of their AI-directed system, think Palantir, the same Palantir AI system that was telling Israelis which Gazans to kill. What if these data centers truly are AI data centers and the controllers, be they from Israel or wherever they're from, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, whoever owns this crap, Kevin O'Leary, what if these AI data centers are being built as the new policing for an entire country? So instead of facing an invading army, we're facing a brave new future controlled by artificial intelligence, robots, unmanned vehicles, unmanned drones, technologies we can't even dream of yet that they might be rolling out, like these flying police cars in the sky. I mean, I think that's the brave new future that's coming into fruition. And I think maybe they really are, Israeli controlled or not. These are artificial intelligence data centers that will be the new system of control. So I guess police listening, actual human beings who are policemen, your job is on the line too, because the brave new future is going to be robotics, unmanned vehicles, drones, all driven by artificial intelligence. And that is a slave grid I don't think any of us could have dreamed of just 5-10 years ago, David.
Yeah, I'd say that fertilizer, food, silver, copper production has already the consequences of the cutoff of the Persian Gulf has resulted in this already being disrupted, and the availability of these items to market. Watch motor oils; they're going to start to disappear, like we're already hearing about it, and it's going to very, very rapidly escalate. And it's going to lead to a very, very large economic disruption. And the escape from this system, the escape pod from this digital system, is private money and citizens voting with their feet. And I don't see how the digital system can be put in place if people start to use private money, and people are waking up very rapidly to this. You're hearing about it more and more and more as we can see the distinctive failure and the very unsavory aspects of government centrally controlled currency migrating now into a digital control and digital ID system. So the future is never guaranteed. We're going to see what happens now. But the globalist plan for total control is pretty clear. Even people who aren't data analysts and who love the word conspiracy theorist are starting to recognize that maybe there's something unusual going on here. It's getting stuffed into their faces to the point that it's very difficult to ignore it any further. So the future is yet to be written, Sean, and individuals, as much as we're told that we can't make a difference and don't get a vote, we do, and we can. So
yeah,
let's see what happens.
Thank you for that. No, I appreciate that. You're right. And everybody listening, please gaze upon my screen and think about this brave new future, which is completely dystopic and anti-human. By design, that's what the controllers want. They want to depopulate the planet. What better way to do that with then, I guess, plausible deniability? Who are you going to point the finger at that point when it's robotics and AI-driven systems which are flying around and killing people like they did in Gaza? Sorry, I just see that coming into fruition, and they're not telling us what these AI data centers are for? Well, maybe we just figured out what they're really for, David.
Yeah, I would encourage people to read about things like the Coinage Act of 1873. It was called the Crime of 73. And that was when the US dollar was redefined from a unit of silver and gold into a unit of only gold. And the recognition, so it meant that you had to ultimately source gold to settle debt if insisted upon. And what it points out to me is that this battle against silver in the hands of the populace, this was, Milton Friedman said by far silver was the greatest historic monetary metal, far surpassing gold. And the day-to-day commerce and exchange has always been with silver, and it's starting up again. And these data centers competing for silver, and the Persian Gulf disruption crimping the supply of silver, is going to send the supply-demand balance into tremendous imbalance this year because of this Persian Gulf War. And I think there's always blowback out there, and I think blowback is going to hit these, these calculating planners. They're predicting or structuring a digital future for everybody. It's going to hit them. They are as subject to reality as anybody else is. And watch silver, watch lubricants and oils, watch food and copper. Like, these things are the things that are going to be disrupted this year as this war in the Persian Gulf continues, and it's going to have unanticipated impacts on individuals. But I think everything is about to become much more local.
All right. Well, you do a lot and you ask for very little. How do people support you, David, and where do they find your work?
Yeah, well, they can follow me. They're on Substack, so it's jensendavid.substack.com, and I try to be data driven and bring as much to people as I can in terms of understanding what is going on. People don't have the time to dig into this stuff to the level that is required to fully understand it. So I hope that there's a contribution of the analysis of these markets that helps people to prepare and helps them to understand ways that they can protect themselves as this new digital control system is imposed globally, from China to the US to Canada to Europe. There's a disturbing linkage that's being made obvious between the Chinese and Western politicians, and it's not in favor of the individuals of the West who love freedom and that love a market economy that actually functions. That was really taken away from us with the creation of the central banks who disrupted market economies. And what the collapse that's coming now, they're going to blame it on market economies, or what they call capitalism. That's a Marxist term. But it wasn't the capital markets or the market economy that resulted in collapse. It is the intervention and rigging of these markets by the central planners, and we need to bring that to a stop.
All right. Final word, guys, with a gaze at this image over on Zero Hedge. And by the way, the title of this article, "You're Not Bullish Enough." You're not bullish enough, folks. You're not bullish enough on your own enslavement in the future of the AI slave grid. So I guess if you want to make money, make fast money, go long AI, go long Nasdaq, and bet on your own enslavement. Here's my thing, guys. My last thought, folks, is get involved and oppose these AI data centers as though your life depends on it, because I think it does. Our guest has been David Jensen. Thank you so much. You're always generous with your time, David.
Thank you. My pleasure, Sean.
Appreciate you. You're one of the best out there. Friends, thanks so much. The links to David's Substack are below, as is the link to sgtreport.com. Visit us there for real news 24/7. And until next time, may God, the Creator, who must be very appalled by what he's seeing unfold on his creation here on Earth, may he continue to bless you and yours. And until next time, God bless. Bye-bye.
55 million people worldwide are living with Alzheimer's or some other form of dementia. And it isn't just one thing that's causing the dementia in cases. It's not just by chance. This is a deliberate targeting of our minds. And most people, Sean, they think of depopulation efforts as just killing people off. Well, think about this. You don't have to kill the body if you destroy the mind first.
That's right.